Well, thank you all for joining me today on this session of BIMXT. We've missed you the last month. We have not been in the meeting due to Autodesk University. And of course, today we have a presentation on the recap. We have an amazing presentation today by three of our advisors, actually. You can see here, I'm actually sharing the mural, our BIMXT mural, which we have every month for you guys. It's really for you, the participants, so that you can get all of our information. You can see here in the chat that somebody upon the team, I'm sure, will share that with us. I do appreciate that. See some nods. In the top left, you can see we have quite a bit of information related to the group itself. Please make sure you join our LinkedIn group. We do post all kinds of great information related to the sessions, future sessions, recordings when they're released, etc. We also are run by a board of advisors. You can find all of our information here related to our social networking, my YouTube channel, Dan BIM, and all of our information related to that. We also are represented by essentially a group of Revit user groups across the East Coast. We're very fortunate to start those up again. All of us are starting to reconvene. So if you were a part of those groups, make sure you're checking out for your emails about those and they're not going to junk or anything like that. Today, as I mentioned, we have an amazing presentation led by our advisors. We have Dan starting up, I believe, with our tip. He's going to come in and talk to us a little bit about the overview. We then have Laura, who's going to talk to us about the efficiency part of Autodesk University, followed up by Andrew, who'll talk about sustainability. And before I move over to Dan, please make sure, once again, you're utilizing the mural for you, because it's for you, the participants of BIMXT, which is why we are here. Now, one thing that we definitely like to do is give a winner, or a prize to a winner, I guess. Today, we have Savannah Sill, congrats, out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Someone will reach out to you about a gift card. Thank you so much for sharing last month on the mural. Make sure you share this month on the mural for your chance to win next month. Very least, make sure that you join or you add over here your location. You can see we have essentially different icons that represent each of the different disciplines that you might be aligned to. I'm a BIM IT, I would kind of call myself. So I would grab probably the one with the laptop, right click and duplicate it. And then you come over here and just tell everybody where I'm coming from by double clicking in there and saying, my name is Dana and I'm calling out of Virginia. So at the very least, make sure you share your location. You can also see that you can share any ideas, anything that you might want to share related to Autodesk University that we didn't talk about, maybe more information about some of the things we did talk about, etc. We also have any questions that you might have specifically for the presenters. They're going to be checking down here as well as in the chat within Zoom. So if you have any questions for them, please make sure you post them here. One really great thing about using Mural rather than Zoom chat is that we can add our comments right back here and answer and respond right on the mural. In addition, we can track it for next month. Maybe we have a lot of questions about one specific topic. We can add another session about that topic. In addition, you can see over to the right of our questions, we have the future of BIMXT. If you have any ideas about future presentations, maybe you have a presentation session you'd like to give, make sure you post there. Enough about Mural for now. I'm going to stop and share and pass it over to Dan. How are you today, Dan?
Great, thanks. Thanks for that introduction, Dana. That was very calming and delightful.
I try. You want to tell everybody a little about yourself?
Yeah, so for those who don't know me, my name is Dan Warren. I'm the BIM manager for McMillan, Pazdan, Smith Architecture. We're based out of Greenville, South Carolina, but we have offices all through North and South Carolina and Georgia. We're a 100% architecture firm. We do nothing but architecture, interior design, and planning. And I was very lucky this year that my firm agreed to send myself and two other members of our team to Autodesk University. Now, my favorite part about Autodesk University is like it's this gigantic scope of all the knowledge that gets shared, right? There's just so much that goes on at AU, it's sort of impossible to gather it all. So if there is a topic that you think we should be talking about, like please feel free. This is just really a reflection of our experiences at AU and what we wanted to share with everyone here. So I'm going to assume that I'm sharing my screen and you can see my opening slide. Is that correct? Good. All right. So let's talk about the vibes, right? Because the vibes are what it's all about, right? So it's notable. It's been 3 years since we got to get together in person again, right? Since the zombie apocalypse started and it wasn't safe to go outside, we finally got the opportunity to get together, and Autodesk made the peculiar decision to go ahead and migrate AU from its longtime home in Vegas to New Orleans, Louisiana, right? Which I was super excited about because New Orleans is a pretty awesome city. And I think as Andrew's going to get into some of the sustainability pieces of AU, I personally thought it was a very appropriate backdrop because I don't know many other American cities that have had such a fraught relationship with climate change and with extreme weather like New Orleans. But the vibe was there. Like, people were excited to be there in person. We were super excited to be in person. And I thought it was a pretty awesome venue altogether. The food was great. The people were great. And personally, I mean, I was really glad that we did it. I'm really glad that we got to go. And I highly encourage in the future, if you're on the fence, just go. Especially if you've never seen AU before, it is a total spectacle and you absolutely should just check it out just to see what it is. But there were a lot of announcements, and that's what I want to start getting into, right? So a lot of big announcements came out of AU. Some were on the main stage, some were done through press release. And I want to talk about some of the big ones that are worth noting. So the first one is like the cloudy future of Autodesk, right? So Andrew Agagnos made the announcement about the Forma platform and what that may or may not look like in the future. So the first thing to note is that the important takeaway is that Autodesk is going all in on the cloud. That's very clear about the future here. And of their 3 segments, each one has its own unique cloud solution environment. So there's Flow for media and entertainment, there's Fusion for manufacturing, and now there's Forma for AEC. So Forge is actually like the underlying infrastructure that supports all of this. And it's being rebranded as Autodesk Platform Services. I keep hearing in like follow-ups and conversations that Forge is becoming Forma, and that's not it at all. Which leads me to my next topic, which is what is Forma, right? I keep getting this question from my teams. So this is a quote from an Autodesk press release on September 27th, which is in the middle of AU. So it says, Forma, the industry cloud for AEC, unifies building information modeling, BIM, workflows for teams who design, build, and operate the built environment. The first Forma offering will help customers extend the BIM process into planning and early stage design. So Forma is not really a thing yet. It is a future vision that Autodesk is rolling out. And I'm going to go ahead and just wildly speculate, because it's my favorite type of speculation, is that ultimately, I think Autodesk is going to start moving us towards like a future where everything is on the cloud. There, like if you go long run, there's the theory of a fileless environment where like there is no Revit file, there are no PDFs, there are no RFIs. It's all just in one database, and the data is all just there, right? It's a pretty far-reaching goal, but ultimately what that would do is it would eliminate the problem that we have with interoperability, which is a huge issue we have just in general. We all use different tools, and those tools don't always talk to each other. So my take on this is like, that's where Autodesk is going. They're moving us towards an environment where everything sort of works in one ecosystem. And we'll see how it goes. But like Forma is not actually a thing yet. It's more of a vision. So, and then we had a lot of big announcements as far as partnerships and acquisitions. So some of these,
Forma is the deliverable.
it might be.
just starting it out.
And it's not confusing at all that they have an existing product called Form It, right? Somebody at the Autodesk marketing team needs to up their game, because it's super confusing when all of these solutions sound very similar. It's like Spacemaker and Placemaker. right? Not
Issues
only,
is my favorite.
but we all have issues.
We do.
So the next thing I wanted to get into were the major announcements, right? So you're going to hear a little about these as we get into some of these as we get into our specific topics. But the biggest one was the Epic Games announcement, in my opinion. So Autodesk announced a partnership with Epic Games, where what they are going to be doing is, if you are a Revit user, if you have access to Revit via an Autodesk license, you are going to be given a license of Twinmotion. If you're not familiar with Twinmotion is a real-time rendering engine that connects with Revit and allows you to do real-time rendering directly out of Revit into the Twinmotion platform. And it's backed by Epic Games, so it's directly competing with products like Enscape and directly competing with products like Lumion. Personally, I'm super excited about this because it also allows a bridge into the Unreal world. And if you're not familiar with Unreal is basically video game creation. So now designers have a direct bridge to go from your Revit and your building design into video game creation to create really fully immersive and interactive environments into visualization, right? So I know that there are teams that have done like live surgery simulations for doing surgical suite layouts and stuff like that to get feedback from teams. So it's a super exciting announcement. The next one was
for those of you guys who aren't familiar with things like Epic Games and these types of incredibly crazy rendering tools, think of Fortnite or these types of games, because Epic Games is the creator or hoster, or I'm not exactly sure what type of information you use there. But there's also Unity,
yes,
and the counterpart to Unreal. So lots of different programs out there related to these types of things, the wild and AR, VR types of environments.
The big takeaway here is that media and entertainment and architecture, engineering, and construction are merging. And that's going to open up a whole new world for us. I know, right?
Awesome.
Architects struggle to communicate their designs as it is. The next big one was the McNeil partnership. So everyone is already on this call is probably familiar with Rhino inside Revit. This is definitely very different than that. What Autodesk and McNeil are working on is an actual true native connection between the two platforms. And the scuttlebutt is that it's going to start as a direct link, and then ultimately it will actually be a native back and forth so that Revit understands what the Rhino components are and Rhino understands what Revit components are. So that was a pretty exciting one. SpaceMaker, which you're going to hear a little bit more about from Andrew, is an AI site development platform. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, did Autodesk partner with SpaceMaker or did they purchase SpaceMaker?
That was an acquisition.
Yeah, so that's super exciting. So now designers, and this is where I actually see the Forma world becoming a little less cloudy and a little bit more concrete, is in that preliminary design analysis. And then we get into the Wild, which is another big acquisition. This actually was announced pre-Autodesk University, but the Wild is, it's a pretty fascinating platform. It allows multi-user immersive cloud-based VR review. So think about it like a Zoom meeting in your Revit model. And that's really the best way to look at it. The performance of their platform is unmatched when you're talking about multiple people interoperating or engaging in the same VR environment. And now we're starting to see, from 3 years ago, the Esri partnership is starting to bear some very real fruit. And I went to some great presentations where there are teams that were actually bringing together the Esri cloud platforms and the Autodesk solutions and actually starting to bring their GIS and their BIM and their engineering teams together on one cohesive platform. And the big takeaway is they stopped creating the same documents over and over, because they had teams that were printing PDFs on both sides of the fence, and they were printing the same PDFs over and over. So a small anecdote, but what it means is that now we can get really, really true site and building collaboration. So, and that's my slide to remind me that I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Laura, who's going to get into a bit more of the get more of the efficiency and automation side of AU.
And before we do that, because Mural is amazing. And for those of you guys who just joined, it might be a little bit foreign for you guys. Once again, Mural is for you guys, the participants. You can see got a little bit of banter going on in Zoom chat. That's cool. But if you have major questions, please make sure you're posting them up here. Like what Justin asked, what competitors' BIM software do you recommend when Autodesk goes 100% cloud-based? And while you guys sit on that for a second, maybe Dan, Andrew, Laura, who's about to present, the way we ask questions and put things in here, you can see I also put in, what was your favorite part of AU? Maybe you have something that you'd like to share about your experience or your virtual experience, right? What was the favorite thing that you saw, or your favorite tip? You can just essentially grab the discipline that most closely aligns to you. You see, we have icons that relate you to your discipline. I'm probably closest aligned to the laptop. So I'm going to right click on there and duplicate that essentially that note within Mural. Now you can see if you just double click on here, you will also create a note. That's absolutely fine too. As long as you're communicating with us, that's all that matters. We just want you guys to chat with us. In addition, you can see over on the right, we've gone through and we have added all of the links for our previous sessions. So you can get to all of the previous sessions that we have from BIM XT. We are over 2 years old now, believe it or not. And the easiest way to get to these links, you can see open link on the very bottom right corner. So if you want to see July's presentation on landscape design, you would simply click on that little button there, and I would take you right there to the YouTube page. Now, Laura Hanyok out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and Chancy Faye's Construction, she's going to talk to us next. How are you today, Laura?
Good. Yeah, I'm with Clancy and Faze down here in Raleigh. You were so close, Dana, so close.
It spit it out. I tried to be so thorough about it that I was bound to fail. I'm so sorry.
Before I talk a little bit about myself, one quick thing I'd also say in the Mural, we've added, you can see those big, let me go ahead and I'll just share that. These boxes over here, we can go ahead and let's not do that. Oh, okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So anyways, if you click on the session links, like Dana said, it's like a little tiny link in the bottom. We've hyperlinked to sessions, but if there are any sessions you went to that you think are awesome and want to share with the group, I would also post those up on Mural too. That way, because it's really hard to kind of wade through all of the different material that Autodesk has up there. Okay, can you all?
It looks like it wants to come up here.
Oh, I am.
You guys see it? Yeah, it looks like it's.
I love technology.
Yeah, technology is great.
I'm having technical difficulties today. For a person that runs virtual meetings.
Especially when you go through all of the different platforms, you got the WebEx, you got the Teams, you got the Zoom, you got all these great things. So
yes,
completely understandable.
I'm going to give it shut down a few things. Let's try this one more time. If not, I'll pass the baton to Andrew. Okay, can you all see my screen?
We sure can.
And still hear me. Okay, thumbs up, we're good.
Everything is great.
So taking, I do work in, like I said, I work in construction as a VDC coordinator. So my perspective, I did work as an architect for about 13 years. So I've got that background as well. So going to AU, I'm now a little bit more focused on the construction side. I still do like to hear all the cool stuff that's going on in design. Sometimes I get a little jealous that things aren't there that were there when I was working in that industry. One thing Dan noted about getting the opportunity to go. It's great. This year we had 3 from Clancy head down there. I think one of the most important things about going to a big conference like this is just the opportunity to meet people who are working in your industry, to find out, to give yourself a kind of gauge of where you're at, but also to talk to people outside of your industry, because like Dan said, we see a lot of media and entertainment stuff shifting into this AEC space. I'm going to talk a little bit about a few sessions I went to that are thinking more about a manufacturing approach. So just understanding what other industries are doing, I think, is really valuable in a big setting like this. So I went to a lot of sessions. I was very proud of myself at this AU. And one of the things I was actually thinking as Dan was talking too is having that 3-year break. I'm now seeing some things implemented that were really just ideas the last time we were all together to actually now be in production. So I'm going to go through a few sessions here that kind of talk about how we are increasing efficiency and collaboration in construction. And yeah, I'm going to present one of the classes I'm going to talk about was an 8 a.m. on Thursday class. So
Oof.
it was one of the best ones I went to. So it was worth getting up that early. Okay. So this session, I'm actually going to share a video in a second here. But it was titled Addressing the Productivity Crisis in Construction. It was one of those that I just kind of signed up for and see what happens. And it was awesome. So they are building, this is an actual building they have constructed. This is a construction photo. Using a platform approach is like the building as a kit of parts. And in my experience, a lot of times when you hear this kit of parts idea, it's either a very small scale or it's just a prototype, never been built. But I thought this was really intriguing because they actually had a building built. This is an office building in London. Thinking about that manufacturing tie-in, I do like some of the points he made that it is different. You know, everyone always shares that McKinsey graph showing how construction hasn't kept up with other industries. But this presenter, one thing he did talk about, which I've also heard before, was, you know, scale is different. We're building buildings. It's not the same as building a thing. The other thing he was talking about was the cost density is different. So just the economic reason for doing it is compared to all the stuff that's stuffed within an iPhone as compared to actual building materials, which are also a lot of just air. So this is a rendering over here of that building, office building in London. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to give it a go to share a video. We'll see if this works. If it does not, it is not the end of the world. I can talk, but this is from their website. And I think it's a kind of a good overview of some of the topics he talked about.
Welcome to the Forge in central London. What you see around me is one of the most significant events in the future of construction. The Forge is the world's first major commercial development, developed by Landsec, to be designed and built using a platform approach for design for manufacturing assembly. It's also the UK's first net zero carbon commercial building. Let's have a look at platforms, what they are and how they work.
A platforms approach takes the lessons learned by the manufacturing industry and applies them to construction. In traditional construction, every building is a prototype and every sector is treated as a specialism. The platform approach looks for commonality between sectors. By working out what buildings have in common, you can design a standard kit of parts that can be put together to form structure of just about any building. Standard parts fit together in standard ways, so the building is leaner and quicker to put up. What you then do with that building, the size, the shape, the style, the function, the finish, that's up to you. Standard parts are also designed and refined repeatedly, so the finished article is the best it can be. And because they are standard, they are manufactured precisely, which means we use fewer raw materials and there's no waste.
Here at the Forge, that translates into an increase in productivity of 30.5%. And we're reducing embodied carbon by 24% compared to a traditional commercial office. On a normal building site, around 30% of all materials ends up as waste. Not here.
I think another area that this project really helps is we're all focused on reducing construction impacts. We're all focused on net zero carbon buildings for the future. And having an approach here where the amount of materials is minimised and optimised, and where waste is reduced to an absolute minimum, are great steps towards achieving that goal, reducing the embodied carbon of construction. In addition to that, we've designed this building to be particularly energy efficient, using a zero carbon solution for our heating and cooling, air source heat pumps, powered by electricity, taking us forward to a future where buildings will all be built to some degree in this way.
What's so exciting and transformational is this is not a theory. Look around me, this is real. This is real change happening right here, right now.
So, oh, stop.
Looks like we are stopped on this side. Oh, looks like it's not stopped for her. She's still getting the video.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. So I like the ties into sustainability, like what Andrew's going to talk about. What I think is really interesting, like I said, not only is it an actual building, it is a large scale. Working in coordination now, I'm seeing how overhead systems never fit in what's designed. I shouldn't say never fit. It's a challenge to get them in. So thinking about, what these installations actually look like is always cool to see. And then just how they actually studied this. So they had a group of Cambridge University students out there actually studying on site every day. So they actually have real world metrics, which we also usually don't see in this situation. So pretty cool stuff. I was really excited about that one. Makes me excited about what the future may hold. Another session focused on this kind of a very similar approach. Alex Janowski, who I can't remember if he's presented at BIMXT or maybe I've just known him from AU and Built, but talking about forming this consortium that includes both trade partners and design. So we can actually do the same manufacturing approach to buildings. I liked this graphic that he included talking about how we lose information kind of at each stage, that red line down along the bottom, and how there are so many opportunities for us to improve that just to make things go more smoothly. The example he gave was having a mechanical trade partner as part of the early on in design. They realized all their duct elbow bends were like an inch short from what was actually going to be installed. So once you add that inch on throughout the project, it actually makes a really big difference. So I know we've talked actually internally here about how we can get information earlier on to the design team, different opportunities like that. So I think this is another case of seeing something actually in practice now. They do have this formed, is really interesting and exciting to see people actually moving this way in the industry. The final thing I was going to touch on was I did go to a Autodesk session talking about the roadmap for the construction cloud, specifically on building collaboration. So there's a few things that they've recently released. Recap can now somehow go direct through the Autodesk Construction Cloud, so we can use it in that capacity. We also have in that module more opportunities now to break down models by properties. We can save in views. We also, and this I think is really exciting, I actually happened to open up a model on my phone the other day by coincidence, but it works. So now I can actually open up a model from the construction cloud saved in the document part, but I can open up that model on my phone or on a tablet. In open beta, they're working on publish to field, so you can actually take a snapshot from model coordination and move that into somewhere where everyone else can access it. That's a big thing for us, is how do our field teams actually access model data? And then they've got a whole host of things coming, which I'm always, curious to see when they're actually coming out. But it looks like they're really putting some money and effort into the model coordination module. We aren't using it yet because we didn't think it didn't quite meet our needs. But the things that they're adding to make it more configurable, having some viewpoint support, some more interoperability with Navis so we can still use that platform, interoperability with Revit so we can translate issues better, I think can really add to what we've already got going on in the cloud platform that we are using. So all in all, although it was a little rocky at times being their first big event since 2019, I thought, like I said, it was great just to talk to folks from all over and see the progress that we've made over the past few years.
Yeah, Laura, I don't know about you, but I'm personally really excited about the recap announcement because point clouds are notoriously difficult to handle and work with. So whatever Autodesk can do to make that process and that technology more user-friendly, I think will aid adoption and just make it easier to get to that value, because that's usually when I find out my architect's like, I have a point cloud. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh boy.
Yep.
Here we
Well,
go.
and then of course the connections through everything with desktop connector and not just Revit files, right? Or
Mhm.
AutoCAD backgrounds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So quick point, by the way, desktop connector is like an unsung hero. Sorry, Indra, to cut you off, but like any Windows compatible file can be saved to desktop connector and it will version up. Like that is a really big deal. Sorry, that's like one of my unsung
you just
heroes.
need to
I
be able
love
to
it.
link them into Revit now.
Yeah.
But absolutely. And thank you so much, Laura. That was very, very insightful. And those videos were great. Just seeing how everything is becoming super connected in the background. And like you're saying, I mean, we've had to be virtual the last few years in many cases. So the way that we've kind of connected the dots in the background has kind of been sped up, I suppose, in many ways.
Yep.
So awesome. Well, once again, looks like we have quite a few things that have been added to the mural on here in terms of what were some of your favorite happenings at AU and your next conferences, etc. So make sure you get on there and add some comments if you haven't already. Once again, we will be giving away a prize, as we always do, next time for a random mural participant. Next up, we have Andrew. How are you doing today, Andrew? And you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Doing well, thanks, Dana. Everybody can hear me?
Sure can.
Cool. I'm Andrew Watkins from Design Collective. We're headquartered in Baltimore, also office in Chicago, which is growing quickly. BIM director / director of technology, and we are multidisciplinary: architecture, urban planning, landscape, interior design, graphics, and wayfinding. So imagine all of the technology challenges each of those disciplines deal with, from the large macro scale down to the micro scale. I do want to share my screen. I was really excited for AU to be back in person because I got to meet Laura and Dan finally, which was exciting. So that was fun, but I'm going to share Twitter for just a second, which is always dangerous, but can you guys see my screen here?
Thank you. Thank you.
Here's Dan tweeting with another guy. Somebody actually animated this on Twitter, so I had to share that for just a second.
Thank you.
But
yes, the power of artificial intelligence and
exactly.
Dutch
There it is. There's part of your theme. All right. So again, it was in New Orleans, which I was super excited about because I had been going to Vegas for like 15, 18 years, and I was just sick of Las Vegas because it's so fake and it's just sensory overload every time you walk through the casino or outside, and they're flicking the little cards as you're walking past people. So it was great to have a different real city to explore. So obviously oysters, world famous seafood, the big wraparound balconies with the wrought iron railings, and of course scenes of Jackson Square. Obviously after conference, you're out late at night, so you don't really see too many people, but it was fun to walk around and take that in a little bit. So I'm going to jump into sessions a little bit here. As Dan mentioned, SpaceMaker, fairly new acquisition. It is trying to take the space of early concept design and analysis. So I'm going to go through that in a little bit. So, what do these little bubble charts mean? So what it really means, we're going from, we use a whole bunch of tools to do a couple of little iterative studies to one tool doing a whole bunch of iterative studies to maybe find an optimized outcome. And so here's what the workflow
Let
looks
us
like.
know on the mural if you guys used or tested SpaceMaker at your office.
Please.
Or even, we would love to see that.
There's
I know that
test
Smith
fit
Group
is
were testing a little bit.
Yep, TestFit is a competitor, but it does not do all the analysis styles that SpaceMaker does. So as you can see, SketchUp, Revit, Rhino, there are several tools that try to take the space of concept design for the AEC industry. And they're all disconnected workflows and all kind of varying levels of data richness. And what SpaceMaker is trying to do is coalesce that into one more linear process where you're studying the site, you're studying massing, you're doing analysis, you're estimating your areas, and you're working directly in the platform with clients. So as we all are familiar with, early on, we're doing massing in either Revit or SketchUp or Rhino. And then at some point we have to redraw the whole thing because none of them are fluent or precise enough to do detailed documentation. So we have to, there's a loss of efficiency. So this is again something SpaceMaker is trying to solve for us. So the ideal workflow has moved from rebuild the model to have a direct plugin to push it into Revit. So push all the rooms, walls, floors directly into Revit. So here we are in SpaceMaker, excuse me. And over on the left panel, you can see we've made a whole bunch of proposals. We'll call them design options for the put it in Revit lingo. And each of these is complying with your building setbacks, your area pro forma. And over on the right side, in the upper area, you can do analyses based on wind, upon noise, upon PV capabilities, photovoltaic capabilities, etc. There are several types of analyses we can do. We'll play this quick video.
So you can pick the ones that matter to you.
About a minute and a half, just kind of describing the connection.
Maximize the performance of your conceptual design studies with improved interoperability between SpaceMaker and Revit. Transfer your SpaceMaker geometry into Revit with the Send to Revit feature, converting your proposal buildings, site setbacks, terrain, and buildable areas into editable Revit elements. To get the latest version of the add-in, access the three-dot menu of any proposal thumbnail and select Download Revit add-in. To transfer your SpaceMaker proposal to Revit, select it and choose Send to Revit. In Revit, click Load on the SpaceMaker tab. The dialog box provides enhanced options to filter out which elements will be brought into Revit and how these elements will be represented. Levels can be transferred and made unique per project or per building. Their extents are cropped to the building geometry they intersect. Buildings can be created as walls, floors, roofs, or generic model families. Adjacent walls are merged into single elements. Rooms can be created for each of the proposal units. The SpaceMaker's proposal's origin is aligned to the project base point in Revit, while keeping its georeference coordinates. Project North can be automatically aligned to the proposal's longest wall. Satellite imagery can be applied to the Revit toposurface as a material. Quickly move design proposals into production with this enhanced interoperability between SpaceMaker and Revit.
So some cool stuff there. I see a couple of questions on the mural. I'm going to jump on right now since it's kind of top of mind. Dana, you asked, can you pick the aspects that matter to your project? Do you have a setback allocated? Yes. So you can do setbacks. You can do view corridors that need to be maintained.
I guess more specifically, do you have to have a setback, right? Or like, can you, right? Like, so you can kind of pick and choose which aspects matter to you in your project.
Exactly. And Chris Alexander, you note you're noting that it is not released for America yet. It is just being released now, so it is available and it is in beta for study. So there's no pricing information available yet. If you go on their website, you can ask for pricing and they'll get back to you maybe.
It looks like you can get a free trial. I just put the image and link up there now, cool. So you guys can get to it under the ideas to share.
So this slide is a screen capture of a futures session I attended on SpaceMaker's sustainability analysis capabilities. And they're currently able to do operational energy, solar panel potential, microclimate analysis, like comfort in wind comfort and things like that. but in beta is embodied carbon as well as adaptive reuse capabilities. So that's coming soon. Those future sessions were not recorded, so I couldn't do anything other than do the old take a picture of the screen. So next up, staying on the sustainability thought process, it was a session by Ian Malloy and Marta, developers of Insight. If anybody's attended sessions by Ian, he's got that great Irish brogue, so everything sounds incredibly intelligent and compelling. But the important thing to start out was that a lot of firms have committed to the AIA 2030 challenge, which means moving towards carbon neutral design and construction. But very few firms have actually adopted the tool sets to enable that kind of work in design, which is, it's kind of appalling that we're 8 years away from 2030 and 25% of firms have actually started doing it. So we have a long way to go. But here's part of the issue is, there are so many tool sets available, right, for doing this kind of analysis, everywhere from Excel to some third-party plugins like Tally and CodeTool, which Design Collective do currently use. Dynamo, those scripts work until a new version of Revit is released, and then you have to start all over again. And then operational carbon is even a whole different set of platforms like Insight, which is very good at operational carbon, Sapphira, things like that. But it's really difficult to purchase and maintain all of these softwares, let alone learn how to use them all. So now we start to look at, and we've all seen this graph before, but it's the ideal time to start incorporating sustainable design thinking into your projects is very early in planning and design stages. But again, when do these tool sets become most useful for us when we're designing? So we during operations of a building, we've become very good at predicting how much energy a building will consume, how much heating and cooling people need to be in the building. So a lot of tools are dedicated to the operational phase of a building, and operational carbon we call it. But embodied carbon is much more difficult to predict because the materials are always changing in design. We don't know whether it's a brick or terracotta clad building. How much does it cost to deliver all this stuff to the job site? How much does construction activity actually add to the carbon consumption of a project? So we do have these tool sets, Autodesk does. The Insight is primarily focused on the architecture and is very good at doing operational carbon. And the systems analysis components introduced, I believe, in Revit 2020, are getting better at the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. And again, there are no real good ways to do embodied carbon analysis of the earlier design phases. So that's what Insight is being retooled for, based on Forge. Yes, it still does exist, using the Energy Plus computational engine, and they will start to do both operational and embodied carbon, and that is out in beta now as well. So that's going to start to allow us to do things like understand what the mass form of a building is, and how what the construction of the exterior wall and what those impacts are on overall operational and embodied carbon, as well as, again, studying whether new construction makes sense or whether keeping an existing facade makes sense and doing renovation. So they can start to do that kind of analysis right in the Insight platform and do those studies. And you can see in this specific instance, this facade, maintaining that would save 10% of the carbon consumption of a building. So that is what is coming soon in Insight. What is really interesting is the next session I attended was about a third-party tool called Carbon Cost Compass. It is developed by a company in Sweden called Sweco. And sorry, the name of the session was Fun, Fast, and For Real, Reducing Climate Footprint in a Click. And this is built on it's web-based, and it is connecting directly to BIM 360 models. So it is, as the name of it says, it is tracking cost and carbon consumption of a building. So it's allowing you to look at both of those things in the same lens. So as you're sitting with a client, you can look at your building as it is being developed right in the cloud. And each time you publish a model, it is updated in their platform. It is directly connected to your BIM 360 models. And it is reporting what is the CO2 output of the building, what is the Kronor, or in this instance, what is the cost of the building. And then you can look at a breakdown of each kind of component of buildings and see what the cost and carbon footprint of each of those is. So yes, it is Swedish based right now, but they are developing it for the North American market as we speak. So now we're in Revit making a change with a client potentially. We publish that model, and now we can update it in the platform. And the interesting thing is, early on, we're often using generic wall types, right, or generic floors, and we don't want to put a lot of information in these because it's just going to change. We know that. But what they have figured out is to develop this database of recipes, if you will. And so interior walls, exterior walls, floor and ceiling assemblies are all kind of made as a recipe, and that has a cost and a carbon kind of a allocation to each of them. So as they look at the recipes are all in a database, and that gets transferred into your model in BIM 360, which then is open in their web-based viewer, and then outspits the carbon footprint in kilograms per CO2 kilograms, and then cost. So ultimately, you can look at all of these things in conjunction with each other. So it's not just looking at carbon footprint or energy footprint. You can also look at it with the cost in mind. So you can look at it with carbon being the most important factor, or cost being the most important factor, or a balance of the two. So you can make changes to these wall systems right in this platform, and it will have a different results. You can see tabs. It's kind of grainy. Sorry about that, but in the upper left there, you can see tabs as you create different design options again. And each of these, maybe I'm changing from a brick veneer to a terracotta panel system, and each of those has a different result. And you can really start to dial in your preference. So that was Carbon Cost Compass. And I wanted to finish with a couple sneak peeks at what's being developed for Revit. Dan already mentioned this one. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be included in our AEC collections for Twinmotion. A bidirectional link with Rhino. I saw that in action. Should have taken a video of it, and I didn't think to. But a curvilinear curtain wall was developed in Rhino. That component was pushed into Revit, and then the mullions and curtain wall panels were all taggable right in Revit. Real 3D wall layers in Revit. So there will be you'll select a wall, and there will be a modify layers button. So you'll be able to modify layers directly right in for each of those walls. Chris, I was doing that exact same thing when when I heard that and saw that demonstration. This is the most exciting part for me. I almost jumped out of my seat when I saw this one, because, oh my God, tunnels. How long have we been asking for tunnel modeling in terrain in Revit? So this is what I was fanboying out on, on that. I was super excited about that. So here it is in action. There's actually this tunnel was pushed right under that topography, and it looked like they were using voids, but it was actually, this topo solid is actually a topo solid, so you could cut voids right through it. So development team Harlan Brum gave this presentation, and he made a point to say that, you know, we are developing Revit, so they are in fact working on it behind the scenes. And with that, I am done.
Thank you, Andrew. There was a question from Jason that I went ahead and threw on the mural. Do you see SpaceMaker intended to replace Format?
God, you know, speaking of Format, and I'm going to answer this in a second, there were no sessions about Format, and I was kind of shocked at that.
Surprising.
Because they are working on Format, and so I was a little surprised that there was no mention of it. So to that end,
I know people are using it and using it expertly.
So I think maybe the question, maybe the answer is yes, but a lot of this is gonna, you know, I question that myself.
Well, I'd like to interject here. So I think, you know, SpaceMaker does a great job of bringing site information and site analysis into the design process, and then feeding that into Revit, right? So like the limitations of your site and limitations of your development requirements, right, are now being, like, we can now model based off that information. But Format does a lot more than push pull little blocks to make a site, like to make a site object. It has the ability to do back and forth bespoke modeling elements. So I can carve out a chunk of my Revit file, push it directly to Format, mock up a few design options in Format, and then push them directly back into Revit. And those objects know where they're supposed to be in Revit. Format also natively understands Revit materials. So if you edit a material in Revit, Format understands that, and the material updates in Format, something SketchUp can't do. So I think it's one of those things, like I see everything that Autodesk is doing as embracing the concept of let's focus on, like, let the tool do what the tool does best, and let's focus on getting the tools to work together, right?
So we could say that in a way, it's kind of a bridge to bring everything together, all the analytics, all of the geometry, all of the site components, all of those pieces and parts early in the design process, we could say.
Right. Yeah, because it's, you know, the site information is so complex, and every different site tool I've looked at does it slightly differently with pros and cons.
General thoughts on,
I look at it kind of like the acquisition of PlanGrid, and they're kind of slowly pulling components of PlanGrid into Build. And my, you know, again, wild ass assumptions, to use Dan's term, I think maybe Format and SpaceMaker will be merged at some point, the capabilities of each. To me, that would make sense, but it's probably a lot of development work in the back end to make that happen.
That's, I mean, that's kind of Autodesk MO, right? Let's buy a bunch of solutions and then figure out how to get them to work together.
Yep.
All righty. So I guess it's my turn. So I'm going to transition to, I don't want to share my sound. I don't have sweet videos. Now, you're either seeing my slide or you're seeing my slide with my notes. I can't remember which one am I showing. Can you see?
I think it's just a slide.
Just your slide.
Okay, awesome. Okay, very good. So Andrew had mentioned it, and while I don't have like sweet class clips to share with everyone, I'll be pretty quick about this because we are running slim on time. So the Epic Games announcement was really huge, in my opinion. Unfortunately, like I attended a bunch of artificial intelligence classes, which is what I wanted to present on, but none of those classes got posted to the AU website, so I can't share those with you. But the Epic Games class, I can, and I went and I watched it, and it really is quite awesome. This tool came out about 2 years ago as Epic Games produced Twinmotion and has rolled it out into the AEC environment. And it allows you to really start like editing and modifying your design environment, very much kind of like Lumion, but it's much more GPU based. So it tends to run a bit smoother. It's a little bit like nicer on the eyes. And the interface, in my opinion, is just like super easy to figure out and use. You don't need a bunch of like special training. Additionally, it ports in with Unreal, so now you can actually start like creating custom environments and emerging your design content into that. So I'm super excited about this. I did share a class on this one because I couldn't share you my artificial intelligence class on it. But this is like one of the most exciting things that came out of AU, in my opinion. I know internally we're going to start rolling this out across the firm. The next one is the Wild. So I went to their booth and got to check them out. I've been following the Wild for a while now, and they have a really interesting product. If you have never seen the Wild, I would recommend you go check them out, especially if you're investigating or piloting virtual reality solutions for the purposes of collaboration or coordination. Like I said, it's kind of like Zoom for VR, but it's one of those things. I can't really like give you a good experience of a virtual reality solution in a Zoom webcast, right? So I just highly encourage you to go check them out. Basically, it's one of those things where I can go directly into my model. And when we demoed this internally with the Wild team, we had a team in Greenville, we had a team in Spartanburg, and the actual guy who was running the presentation and demo was in Pittsburgh. And the audio was flawless between all the members that were participating with the headsets on. And the fidelity of your avatars moving around in the space was also extremely good. What I also like about the Wild is it brings mixed medium to it. So if you're not comfortable using the headset, they have a iOS available solution that allows you to join and view the VR environment without having to put the headset on. But this was one of the really, really exciting acquisitions that came out. And it's great to see that this company's grown up, and I really like their product. So I would highly recommend you check these out. Now, my next question is this is really all I have for my slides. So I guess my next question is for the team is who here is using VR, because we're just piloting it. And we're getting traction, but we're getting traction in the places we didn't expect to. We're having a hard time getting clients to actually like be receptive to VR in a lot of times. We're actually seeing a lot more collaborative, like designer to designer value, because they never get into a space and walk around and not find something that needs to be fixed in Revit. So I'm just curious what y'all's experiences are with it.
We're using it all over the map. Oh, sorry, Laura.
I was going to say, before I started here, like when I started here, we were using a bit, obviously on the construction side. We're still looking for some good applications in the construction world. I'm sure Ryan Pastor has some comments on that. So I think it's something that it's time to like evaluate again with all the.
And please, in the mural, I know Dan put in some questions under the ideas to share. So please, Ryan, anyone who has information on some of the VR tools that they're using. I know with healthcare, we use it quite a bit for, nurses' stations and different things like that, operating rooms for, the people who staff within the hospital, for them to get a better understanding of the space. I'm not sure whether we're doing that in construction, but we are working with AR in construction specifically to understand as-built and whether it's the design intent, different really custom pieces and things like that. I know there's a presentation that we did with BIMXT with David Firsch out of Smith Group, who actually worked on the DC water building in DC and used VR goggles to ensure that the panels on the exterior of the building were set up correctly. Using from all the way to interviews to construction at Smith Group. So David Firsch, who was actually on the call here, I'm putting him on the spot. He definitely is using it in wild ways. He heads our visualization department. We'll have to have him present again. Laura, any other ways maybe you guys use it in your office? Or Andrew?
Sorry, I put it on the chat, but we have a VR cave that we use Enscape pretty exclusively to do. We invite clients right to our office and also virtually, but it's much more effective virtually to in person, to use just an Oculus Rift and have them put it on and walk through their facilities. It's very effective.
So you guys have like a dedicated sort of conference room space that you use that for?
Yep.
Well, it is 2:00. We want to respect everybody's time. We'll stay on for a minute for those of you guys who have some extra time. I threw up a BIM Thoughts podcast that Carl, myself, and Bill DeBubic did 2 years ago, actually, over 2 years ago with the Wild prior to the acquisition. So check that out. Really cool information. We chat with Gabe on that. So definitely some really great information. Thank you to the 3 advisors. I know Laura had to jump off, but 3 advisors who are not really fantastic advisors to the board, but gave really fantastic presentations today. So thank you, all 3 of you. And of course, thank you to all the participants today. We really do appreciate just looking at the mural and seeing how active that was. That's really fantastic. So thank you, all of you guys. And thank you for allowing BIMXT to grow to what it is.